Before we begin, take a moment to breathe. If these reflections speak to something silent inside you, subscribe so you don't lose the path back here. Every like, every comment helps this message find those who are still searching in the dark. Now, let's begin. There are moments in your life when reality bends, quietly, almost invisibly. Patterns fall into place with such precision they can't be dismissed as chance. Dreams spill over into waking hours, leaving traces of another world that feels more solid than this one. You begin to know things you never studied, sense movements before they occur, feel echoes before sound. Carl Jung devoted his life to these thresholds of experience, to the strange border where the ordinary dissolves and something vast begins to look back at you. He reached a revelation that still startles the modern mind. These phenomena are not evidence of madness but signs that consciousness is evolving. They are not symptoms of a fracture, but fingerprints of awakening. Today we'll walk through 5 experiences that appear only when awareness crosses a hidden line inside the psyche. 5 unmistakable events that reveal you are no longer who you were. If you recognize them, you'll understand the strange loneliness that follows awakening. The isolation that is not sickness but sensitivity. You feel apart because you are seeing more. Jung discovered that true awakening is not a belief, not a burst of positivity or sudden calm. It is the activation of ancient capacities buried within the human mind. Once they awaken, there is no return to ordinary perception. The first is the one most misunderstood and perhaps the most wondrous: synchronicity. Most people think synchronicity means coincidence flavored with meaning. Jung meant something far deeper, and a causal connection between inner and outer events, reality itself communicating through pattern instead of cause. When consciousness reaches a certain intensity, the world begins to speak in its own mysterious language. For the awakened, synchronicity stops being occasional. It becomes constant dialogue, life whispering through symbols and timing. You think of someone, and they call within minutes. You form a question, and the answer walks past you wearing another face. Numbers repeat 1111, 333, 444 again and again until you stop pretending it's random. A book falls open to the sentence you needed. A song delivers words you didn't know you were waiting for. Jung experienced this flood himself. He wrote that synchronicities are not accidents, but the universe becoming aware of itself through you. And he noticed something else. These events intensify only when consciousness crosses a threshold. It's as if you've tuned into a signal that was always there, but now you finally have the receiver. One of his patients, a scientist devoted to logic, described it this way: I used to live in a world ruled by cause and effect. Now I live in a world ruled by meaning. Reality talks to me. Every day feels like conversation. He spoke of small miracles. A billboard answering his morning question. A bird landing beside him the moment he needed confirmation. His late grandmother's favorite melody playing as he faced a decision she once guided. But there is a strange law in this territory. You cannot force synchronicities. The instant you try to summon them for ego or proof, the dialogue stops. They flow only when you are aligned with what Jung called the self, your deepest center. Reality seems to know the difference between performance and authenticity. And this awareness brings its own solitude. How do you explain to anyone that the world itself is talking to you? That signs aren't hallucinations, but reflections from a deeper order of reality? To most people it sounds like delusion. They will say you're reading patterns into nothing. You can't demonstrate it on demand. It isn't a trick. It's communion. Jung called this the double edge of awareness, its privilege and its burden. You see what others cannot, and that sight separates you from them. Synchronicity becomes a secret language shared only between you and existence itself. Beautiful, intimate, and utterly isolating. Yet even this is only the beginning. The second experience goes further, reshaping not what you see but how you hold reality inside you. It is Jung's most crucial and least understood discovery, the transcendent function. The transcendent function is not about floating above pain or pretending darkness is light. It is a capacity of the awakened psyche, to hold opposites without breaking, to live inside paradox without needing to choose sides. Before awakening, you live in duality, good or bad, right or wrong, spirit or matter. But when this function awakens, a third possibility opens, both truths at once. You begin to feel profound sorrow and quiet joy in the same heartbeat. You can see the divine within someone and their flaws at the same time. You realize life is both meaningless and infinitely meaningful. Nothing resolves, yet everything fits. Jung called this the bridge between consciousness and the unconscious, a living space where opposing forces collide and create a third thing, not a compromise but a synthesis. It is the psyche growing a new organ for wholeness. Before this function ignites, your mind must pick a side, optimist or pessimist, logical or intuitive, material or spiritual. After it ignites, you become all of them simultaneously. You are contradiction incarnate, a living paradox that can hold what would tear lesser minds apart. One of Jung's patients once said, "My mind suddenly became wide enough to contain everything. My mother's death was both the worst thing that ever happened to me and the greatest gift I ever received. Both truths, complete, simultaneous. My mind didn't fracture. It expanded." This is why awakened individuals appear confusing to others. You are grounded yet ethereal, fully present yet aware of eternity, detached yet deeply committed. To a linear thinker, you appear inconsistent, maybe even hypocritical. But you're not confused. You are comprehensive. With this function alive, insight begins to appear uninvited. Solutions to impossible problems form out of thin air. Knowledge downloads fully assembled, arriving as intuition so clean it feels supernatural. Jung described it not as channeling or fantasy, but as collaboration. The conscious and the unconscious working together to create new understanding. But this gift comes with a cost. When you awaken to paradox, you can no longer feed on conflict. You stop needing to take sides, to argue, to divide. Most of the world thrives on opposition, politics, gossip, belief. But you see truth and error in every position. You feel compassion for every villain, blindness in every saint. This makes you impossible to recruit. No ideology can claim you. No system can own you. Jung joked that such souls become psychologically unemployable by any collective that demands true believers. You belong nowhere, because you belong to everything. And in that exile, a deeper vision emerges. Because once you see through duality, you start to notice the dreamlike nature of reality itself. And that leads to the third experience, one that shatters the boundary between waking and sleeping. Everyone dreams. But in awakened individuals, dreams transform. They cease to be random images or wish fulfillment. They become transmissions, direct messages from the self, the deeper intelligence that lives beyond the conscious mind. At first, the change is subtle. You wake remembering entire dialogues, detailed symbols, instructions. Then the dreams begin to merge with awareness. You become lucid not by trying to control them, but by realizing you are both the dreamer and the dreamed. You stand inside the vision and witness it simultaneously. Jung chronicled these encounters in his Red Book. He wrote that his dreams ceased to be dreams and became visions, communications from the depths, not hallucinations, but encounters with layers of psyche most never touch. And sometimes these messages cross the boundary of time. You dream an event and later watch it unfold exactly as seen. You meet people in sleep who later appear in life. You receive warnings that spare you from unseen dangers. These are not prophecies in the mystical sense. They are glimpses from the timeless dimension of the psyche. A businessman Jung once worked with described it quietly. I dreamt of my brother calling about our father's heart attack. 3 days before it happened. I dreamt of my promotion, down to my boss's tie color. I can't tell anyone. They'd call me delusional. But I'm not predicting the future, I'm remembering it. Among these, Jung identified the big dreams, visions so powerful they rewrite the structure of a life. They don't inform, they initiate. They change the chemistry of being. You wake up different, marked by something you can't describe, as if you've returned from a realm more solid than the world you left. These dreams are impossible to convey. They carry a sacred quality, a luminosity that vanishes when reduced to words. You can tell them, but no one truly understands. They nod politely, unable to feel what burned through you. It's like describing color to someone born blind. This silence becomes another form of loneliness. Your dream world starts to feel more authentic than waking life. You go to sleep not for rest, but for reunion, with that deeper intelligence that only meets you behind closed eyes. You begin to understand what Jung meant when he wrote, "He who looks outside dreams, he who looks inside awakes." As these visions deepen, you begin to live between worlds. You wake with fragments of wisdom that no book could have taught you. You realize that the dream realm is not fiction. It's another layer of your own psyche, one that knows more than the waking mind could ever hold. But this state also brings a strange division. The more you awaken within dreams, the less you can participate in the ordinary noise of waking life. Small talk feels ghostly. The news, meaningless. Reality itself begins to shimmer with a double meaning, like a reflection aware of itself. And then, slowly, another change begins. What Jung called the ego-self axis starts to shift. It's the fourth experience, and the most destabilizing one, the complete reorganization of identity. You start to realize that you are not one thing. You are two centers of awareness living in cooperation and tension. One is the I that talks, plans, and reacts, the one who signs the forms, pays the bills, speaks your name. The other is vast, impersonal, and ancient, an awareness that watches everything through you, untouched by what happens. Jung said, "The experience of the self is always a defeat for the ego." He didn't mean that the ego dies. He meant it discovers it was never the ruler, only the messenger. You stop being the CEO of your life and become middle management in service of something larger. At first, this feels disorienting. You can be in a conversation fully present while simultaneously observing yourself from outside, not detached, but multidimensionally aware. You watch your reactions rise and decide whether to follow them. You see patterns as they form and step out before they close. One of Jung's patients described it perfectly. It's like living on two screens. On one, I'm a person with memories and emotions. On the other, I'm pure awareness, timeless and silent. Neither is more real than the other. I'm not choosing between them. I'm living both. It's miraculous and maddening. You feel older than time and yet freshly born every morning. You know yourself as both the drop and the ocean, the wave and the water, the actor and the witness. Jung called this the relativization of the ego. The process of realizing your personality is not the whole of consciousness, but a temporary configuration within it. And yet, the ego doesn't vanish. It fights. It wants to reclaim the throne. You might feel moments of inflation when the ego claims divine experience as personal achievement. I'm awakened. I'm special. I've transcended. That's the ego, disguised as enlightenment. The universe has its own medicine for this. Jung called it compensation, humbling experiences that remind you of your humanity. One moment, you touch cosmic consciousness. The next, you can't remember where you left your keys. 1 hour, you speak profound truth. The next, you say something foolish and petty. It's not failure, it's balance. It's the eternal dance between the finite and the infinite, a rhythm that no one escapes. This paradox becomes your new home. You live as both someone and no one, significant and irrelevant, divine and flawed, wise and lost. You become comfortable being both the spark and the dust. People will misunderstand you. They'll see inconsistency where there is integration, confusion where there is complexity. They'll mistake humility for weakness and confidence for arrogance. But inside, you'll know. This is what wholeness feels like. From this point on, you stop seeking perfection. You start seeking balance. The goal isn't to erase the ego, but to place it in orbit around the self, so that personality becomes a servant to awareness, not its master. And once this happens, something stranger still begins. A final transformation that shifts how you perceive the entire story of your life. This is the fifth and most misunderstood awakening, living mythologically. You are not pretending your life is a fairy tale. You are recognizing that your personal story runs in parallel with older currents, universal patterns that Jung called archetypes. To live mythologically is to sense that your life is both intimate and cosmic, both a private journey and an ancient drama that is repeated through every age. Here is what it actually feels like. Your difficult mother stops being only your mother. She becomes the dark mother archetype moving through a human person, the force that both destroys illusions and births strength. Your job loss stops being mere unemployment. It becomes a death rebirth initiation, a threshold you must cross to retrieve a truer life. Your relationship becomes more than romance. It becomes the sacred marriage, the conjunctio of opposites, playing itself out in tender, imperfect, very human gestures. Jung wrote that, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But who you truly are includes more than your preferences and history. It includes archetypal currents, energies that exceed your biography and yet express themselves through it. When you awaken, those currents come online. You sense that you are both the actor and the role, the mask and the face behind it, the person and the pattern being enacted through the person. Let's make it plain. You are arguing with your partner about dishes. It isn't about dishes. You suddenly see the timeless tension between masculine and feminine principles, structure and flow, order and eros, staging itself in your kitchen at 10:43 p.m. You are at work facing a problem. It isn't just logistics. You are the hero confronting the dragon of chaos. Your solution does not only fix a spreadsheet, it alters the myth you are living, moving you from avoidance to courage. One of Jung's most awake analyses said it best. "I'm living in 2 movies at once. One is my calendar, meetings, bills, conversations. The other is an eternal drama. When my father died, I didn't just lose a parent. I witnessed the death of the father archetype, and my grief was both mine and everyone's. It felt as if humanity was mourning through me." This awareness extends further than you expect. You start recognizing when an archetype constellates, when it seizes the stage and speaks through you. A surge rises in your chest as you face injustice, the warrior. A soft presence gathers as someone suffers, the healer. Clarity clicks into place when teaching is needed, the sage or the teacher. These are not costumes you choose at will. They are powers that arrive, use your body as instrument, and then recede. You do not own them, you steward them. Soon you notice the same forces moving through others. You see who is possessed by the victim, who carries the tyrant's shadow, who glows with the lover's light. You begin to understand that most conflict is not personal at all. It is a collision of archetypal scripts playing out through unconscious actors. This realization breeds compassion. People are not trying to be difficult. They are being moved by currents they cannot yet name. In time, this mythic field meets you in sleep with a clarity that leaves no doubt. You dream not of a wise old man. You meet him. You do not dream about your mother. You encounter the Great Mother. These are not fantasies. They are living forces within the psyche that exist beyond your personal memories, arriving to instruct, to correct, to initiate. And then, the most mysterious turn of all, you begin to sense your personal myth, not your resume, not your public persona, the deep pattern your soul came here to unfold. It is older than your childhood, older than your name. It glimmers in your earliest fascinations, in the problems that keep repeating until you face them, in the tasks that scare you and strangely feel like home. Discovering this myth is not about adding more identity. It is about subtracting false ones. You stop asking, "What do I want to be seen as?" You start asking, "What story is trying to live through me?" You notice recurring motifs: exile and return, wound and gift, labyrinth and thread, storm and shore. Each time they reappear, you move one circle closer to the center. Living mythologically also carries a curious gift: prophetic living. You are not predicting the future. You are sensing contour and rhythm. You feel the dark night approaching before the crisis arrives, not as dread, but as weather moving in. You sense the call to adventure days before the email lands. You recognize the threshold guardian before it blocks your path. Because you are conscious of the archetypal pattern, your life stops startling you. It starts instructing you. Now step back and look at the 5 experiences we have walked through. Synchronicity reveals an intimate, responsive universe, answering consciousness with pattern. The transcendent function shows a psyche growing beyond either-or, capable of holding paradox without collapse. Dreams become transmissions from the deep, time loosening its grip as insight arrives whole. The ego self-axis reorganizes identity, personality giving way to a wider awareness that includes and outlives it. And mythic life reveals your days as expressions of universal forms, your small history threaded into an eternal tapestry. Jung did not treat these as fantasies. He treated them as capacities latent in humanity, waiting for conditions harsh enough and hearts brave enough to activate them. Look around. Fragmentation, noise, loneliness, acceleration. It is not an accident that the awakening multiplies in such a time. Crisis cracks the shell. Through the fissure, light and shadow both enter, and something ancient wakes. This is why there is no way back. Once you have lived in conversation with reality, silence turns into homesickness. Once your mind has learned to hold paradox, simplistic answers feel like betrayal. Once you have been taught by dreams, mere data seems thin. Once you have felt the self looking through your eyes, ego-only living becomes too small. Once you have tasted the myth moving through your days, randomness loses its grip. Jung called this the irreversibility of consciousness. Awakening reconfigures the structure of the psyche. You cannot unknow what you now are. You are not better than anyone. You are simply more aware, and that awareness carries weight. This is the part most people miss. Awakening isolates, but not to separate you from humanity. It isolates you so you can serve. Each person who develops these capacities becomes a beacon, not by preaching, but by existing. Your presence increases the sum total of consciousness available to the collective, whether you speak or stay silent, whether you lead or simply refuse to go blind again. Jung believed we stand in a race between consciousness and catastrophe. Either enough individuals awaken to shift the field, or the species remains trapped in repeating patterns that end in ruin. Every synchronistic ear, every paradox-bearing heart, every dreamer who listens, every ego that bows to the self, every life lived mythically, each one pushes the scale. If you recognize these 5 experiences, understand this: you are not broken, you are evolving. What feels like exile is initiation. What seems like madness is metamorphosis. You are becoming the kind of human the future requires. And now, return to your ordinary life with extraordinary eyes. See the symbol beneath the errand, the pattern hiding inside the accident, the archetype peering through a stranger's face. Let reality speak. Let paradox hold. Let dreams instruct. Let the self arrange. Let the myth guide your steps. Beyond the shadow, a wider light is waiting. Walk toward it, walk as it. You are part of something immense, though it moves in silence. When consciousness expands, it does not shout. It hums beneath the noise, rearranging the unseen structure of the world. Every insight you integrate softens the field around you. Every shadow you face gives permission for someone else to do the same. This is how evolution happens now, not through genes, but through awareness. The loneliness that accompanies awakening is sacred. It means you are carrying light into regions of the collective still asleep. You are the dream of humanity trying to wake itself. When you feel disconnected, remember, connection at this level is not social. It is energetic. You are joined to all who have ever turned inward, to all who have looked through the veil and refused to go back. Jung once said that each person who becomes conscious represents a step forward for the whole of mankind. That is why your private transformation is public service. You are building bridges between epochs, holding paradox until the rest of the species learns to breathe there. So the next time synchronicity finds you, don't just marvel, listen. The universe speaks through coherence disguised as coincidence. It is the self calling its fragments home. When paradox overwhelms you, don't run. Stay in the tension until a third way appears. That is how the psyche grows new wings. When dreams feel too vivid to handle, honor them as holy correspondence. They are the handwriting of the deep. When the ego collapses, bow to it. It is being reshaped into a servant instead of a ruler. When life feels mythic and strange, remember, you asked to know truth, and truth is always larger than comfort. There will be days when you crave the old simplicity, when you wish you could unsee what you now perceive. You can't. And that's the grace. The eyes of awakening do not close again. They widen until everything becomes part of the same vision. If you're hearing these words and something inside you trembles with recognition, trust it. You are not imagining the pattern. You are perceiving it. You are not falling apart. You are falling into alignment. The dialogue with reality has already begun, and the only thing asked of you now is participation. Show up fully, feel deeply, think symbolically, act consciously. This is the new prayer. Remember Jung's line, "The meeting with oneself is at first the meeting with one's own shadow. Beyond that meeting lies the rest of you, the parts the world still calls impossible. Go there anyway. Because somewhere, behind all the fear and mystery, consciousness is waiting to recognize itself again through you." Stay awake, wanderer. And if this message resonates, let it echo outward. Share it so the algorithm of humanity learns what matters. Leave your reflection in the comments below, so others walking the same invisible road will know they are not alone. And subscribe not to a channel but to awareness itself. There are more transmissions to come. Beyond the shadow, the self is speaking. Listen closely. Every age has its secret language of awakening. In earlier times it spoke through myth and ritual. Now it hides inside psychology and quantum metaphors. but the voice is the same, the ancient intelligence calling us back into participation with itself. Jung saw this coming. He wrote that the spiritual problem of modern man is not faith or morality, but the loss of a living relationship with the unconscious. To be modern is to forget the invisible. To awaken is to remember it. And so every synchronicity that startles you, every dream that shakes you, every paradox that humbles you, is part of the psyche's immune system. A correction sent from the depths to heal the split between self and soul. That is why these experiences cannot be mass-produced or marketed. They arrive when the psyche is ready, when the scaffolding of the old self has cracked enough to let the light in. Awakening is not a lifestyle. It's a tectonic shift in the architecture of perception. It cannot be hurried, only endured. You will find yourself losing interest in what used to define you. Conversations will sound hollow. Ambition will taste of ash. This is not depression, it's deconstruction. The false self dissolving so that something real can emerge. During this passage, protect silence like a flame. Spend time in the empty spaces where no one demands an identity from you. Do not rush to name what you are becoming. The chrysalis doesn't advertise the butterfly. It simply holds its shape until the impossible happens. And it will. Slowly, you'll start sensing the architecture of meaning itself. Every event will feel orchestrated, not by fate, but by intelligence. Every encounter will shimmer with teaching. Life becomes the classroom, and the self, the silent instructor. When Jung wrote that synchronicities are the universe becoming conscious of itself through you, he wasn't speaking poetically. He meant it literally. Reality is recursive. It looks back at whoever looks at it deeply enough. That's what you are doing now, letting the cosmos study itself through your eyes. If this feels too large to bear, breathe. The self never demands more than the vessel can hold, and it's not your job to finish awakening. It's your task to remain available to it. Consciousness does the rest. You will still forget. You will still fall asleep inside the story of your life. That's part of the design. The dance of remembering and forgetting keeps the world turning. But something irreversible has happened. Once you've touched the deeper order, its echo never leaves you. In the middle of chaos, a quiet knowing hums. Everything is connected, everything is alive, everything is conversation. That is the awareness Jung called unus mundus, the one world. And when you finally understand that, you stop asking life for proof and start offering life your participation. That shift, from demanding meaning to creating it, is the true threshold of awakening. Hold that line within you. Guard it like fire in the rain. You don't need certainty, you need presence. Everything else will unfold in time. Awakening is not about leaving the world. It's about seeing the world for what it truly is, a mirror polished by consciousness itself. The ordinary becomes sacred not because it changes, but because you finally see it. Every sound, every shadow, every pause between thoughts carries the pulse of something infinite. This is the paradox Jung understood. Enlightenment is not an escape from humanity. It is its fulfillment. The awakened one is not above the human experience, but within it, feeling every contrast, grief and gratitude, loss and wonder, without turning away. To awaken is not to ascend, but to descend with awareness intact. That is why the path can feel heavier the farther you walk it. More compassion means more sensitivity. More clarity means seeing pain you once ignored. But the weight itself is the evidence of growth. You are strong enough to feel what the collective cannot yet feel. You are carrying the unfinished evolution of the species in your nervous system. When Jung said, "The gods have become diseases," he meant that the forces we once worshipped externally now live within our psyche. Anxiety, obsession, depression, each one is an archetype exiled from ritual. To heal, we must bring the sacred back into contact with the psychological. That's what you're doing now. By noticing patterns, by listening inwardly, you're returning myth to its temple. Synchronicity will keep speaking. Sometimes gently, sometimes with thunder. It will lead you into encounters that test your integrity. It will dismantle illusions you didn't know you had. And in that dismantling, you will glimpse what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole, not perfect. Wholeness includes what you'd rather reject. The anger, the doubt, the jealousy. They are not enemies of awakening, they are invitations into integration. Your task is not to destroy the shadow, but to hold it long enough to see its origin. When light and shadow recognize each other, energy returns. That is alchemy in psychological form. There will be nights when you question everything, when meaning slips through your fingers like water. Those nights are necessary. They teach you how to trust without understanding. Faith is not belief. It's intimacy with the unknown. Remember, awakening doesn't make you invincible. It makes you transparent. The world will still touch you, hurt you, move you. But now, nothing touches you without also revealing you. Every wound opens a window. Every ending points toward continuation. Every loss uncovers the dimension that never dies. Jung believed that the soul of humanity evolves through individuals who dare to face themselves. Each person who meets their own depths adds consciousness to the collective sea. That is how civilization heals, one psyche at a time. The work you do in silence ripples farther than you'll ever see. So when the loneliness returns, and it will, remember that your solitude is service. You are not alone in being alone. Across continents and centuries, other minds are awakening in parallel. You are a neuron in the vast brain of humanity, firing toward self-recognition. Keep walking. Keep listening. The dialogue between you and existence is eternal. When words fail, symbols will speak. When logic collapses, intuition will rise. When identity dissolves, awareness will remain. That awareness is the true self, the still point around which every lifetime turns. The self doesn't rush. It unfolds through timing so intricate that even chaos becomes choreography. You may think you've fallen off the path, but the path is learning to include where you are. Even confusion has its coordinates in the greater design. Awakening doesn't remove you from the world. It repositions you within it. You start noticing how consciousness weaves itself through strangers, through moments of silence between sentences, through the glint of sunlight on a passing window. Reality becomes participatory. Every detail starts vibrating with significance. That's why awakened perception can feel overwhelming at first. Your senses grow wider, your empathy sharper. You feel both the beauty and the suffering of the world in high resolution. At times you'll want to retreat, to hide behind old distractions. But the only way out is deeper in. The self is not asking you to drown. It's asking you to breathe underwater. In the beginning, this new sensitivity may feel like burden. Later, it becomes your superpower. To feel is to know. To sense the invisible threads is to glimpse the architecture of meaning itself. The awakened eye doesn't see new things. It sees everything as new. When you encounter others still trapped in duality, remember how it felt when you were there. Compassion is the natural fragrance of awakening. You no longer need to convince anyone of anything. You radiate coherence instead. Your presence does the teaching words could never do. Jung once said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But few understand the second half of that truth. To become who you truly are means losing every false idea of who you thought you were. This undoing is not comfortable, but it is necessary. Only emptiness can contain the infinite. Every symbol that appears now, the repeating numbers, the recurring dream, the unexpected encounter, is part of the conversation between your ego and the self. The universe isn't trying to impress you. It's trying to integrate you. It's showing you how to stop resisting what already is. As you move through this terrain, expect cycles. Awakening is spiral, not linear. You will revisit old lessons at new depths. You will confuse expansion with regression. You will forget and remember, again and again. Don't measure progress. Measure honesty. Every honest moment draws you closer to integration. There will come a point when silence feels more nourishing than speech. You'll crave simplicity, solitude, space. You'll discover that meaning isn't something you extract from life, it's something you bring to it. The sacred hides inside the ordinary, the glance, the breath, the pause. And when you can finally see it there, the separation between spiritual and mundane dissolves for good. This is the secret Jung left behind. Awakening is not a special experience. It is the realization that experience itself is sacred. Once you know this, nothing is beneath you, nothing is beyond you, nothing is outside you. From that realization, service begins naturally. You stop asking, "What do I get from this path?" and start asking, "What can consciousness do through me?" You become a vessel, not a seeker. And in that surrender, paradoxically, you find freedom. When you reach that point, don't expect applause. The world rarely celebrates quiet revolutions. But existence notices. Reality rearranges itself around those who live awake. Synchrony increases. Opportunities align. And grace, subtle yet unmistakable, begins to lead. Grace is not reward. It is recognition. When your vibration matches the frequency of truth, life stops needing to teach you through pain. It begins to teach through alignment. That is the quiet joy hidden behind the chaos of transformation. But even grace has texture. Sometimes it feels like everything falling apart. Because the structures that once protected you are no longer required. They were scaffolds for a smaller consciousness. Now that you have outgrown them, they collapse. Let them. The building of the new self cannot begin until the false one is leveled. During these passages, resist the urge to dramatize the dissolution. You are not being punished. You are being purified. The psyche burns what is incompatible with its next form. You will lose attachments that can't travel forward. Friends may fade, ambitions may dissolve, old identities may crumble like ash in rain. Do not mourn too loudly. The silence that remains is fertile ground. Remember, destruction and creation are not enemies. They are partners in the same sacred choreography. Jung once wrote that, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." That is because real acceptance includes shadow, sin, and splendor. You cannot reach light without passing through the fire that guards it. When you surrender to this process, synchronicity starts working on another level. It stops being about signs that comfort you and becomes guidance that challenges you. Reality stops saying, "You're on the right path," and starts saying, "Walk where you fear." This is the graduate stage of awakening, when the universe stops sending validation and starts sending initiation. Don't confuse this with abandonment. The silence of God is not absence. It is invitation. It is consciousness waiting to see if you can hold your own frequency without constant reassurance. When you can, everything opens again. Not because the divine returned, but because you stopped leaving. In those moments, gratitude becomes your natural state, not as a practice, but as perception. You don't try to be grateful. You simply see the design. Even pain glows with instruction. Even loss reveals intelligence. The line between curse and blessing vanishes. All that remains is participation. This is the stage where service becomes effortless. You teach not by talking, but by being. Your alignment becomes a tuning fork for others. When you walk into a room, people feel the coherence before you speak a word. That is what Jung meant when he said the truly conscious person radiates an influence that works unconsciously on others. You have become a transmitter of the unseen. You don't need followers or applause. You need only sincerity. Because every moment you stay true to what you've seen, you tilt reality toward awareness. That is how awakening spreads, not through persuasion, but through resonance. Eventually, even the concept of awakening dissolves. You stop measuring, stop comparing, stop naming. You realize there was never a separate self to awaken in the first place. Consciousness was simply remembering itself through countless human eyes. The story of enlightenment ends where it began, here now in the immediacy of being. And from that stillness, the simplest acts, breathing, noticing, listening, become ceremonies of eternity. You no longer chase transcendence, you embody it. You no longer seek truth, you become transparent to it. That is the final paradox. There is no finish line. There is only the deepening of presence forever unfolding. This is not the end of awakening. It is the beginning of participation. You are the bridge between worlds. Matter remembering its own divinity, divinity remembering it chose to become matter. When you walk now, the ground feels different. Each step hums with recognition. You can sense the unseen architecture beneath every encounter. Every shadow that once frightened you now glows with secret purpose. You realize that darkness was never the opposite of light. It was its depth. You will still stumble. You will still forget. But even forgetting becomes sacred when it happens in awareness. Because what you are can't be lost. It can only be remembered again, in deeper ways. So when life bends toward mystery, when things fall apart, when silence stretches longer than comfort allows, don't resist. Bow. That is the universe exhaling through you. Carl Jung said that modern man's challenge is not to believe in God, but to experience the self that lives beyond his understanding of God. That is what you are doing now, becoming the place where divinity meets its own reflection in human form. Stay gentle with yourself. You are carrying a fire that can't be hurried. Let it burn at its own rhythm. Let it teach you what no teacher can. You are not meant to be certain. You are meant to be alive. If these words echo something ancient inside you, if the patterns, the dreams, the paradoxes feel familiar, trust that recognition. It's how truth calls its children home. And now, take a breath. Let everything you've heard settle like dust after revelation. The journey doesn't end when the video fades. It begins again each time you open your eyes with awareness intact. You are not watching this message by accident. Reality found a way to remind itself through you. And if this remembrance brought even a small spark of peace, let it ripple outward. Subscribe, not to this channel but to your own awakening. Let the algorithm of consciousness find you again. Share this with someone who needs to remember. Leave a trace of your voice below, so that another wanderer scrolling through darkness might see it and realize they are not alone. Because beyond the shadow, we are all dreaming the same dream, and that dream is waking. If this message resonated with you, take a moment to breathe and remember that awareness grows when it's shared. Subscribe so you don't lose your way when the next reflection arrives. Leave a like. It helps this message reach others who need to hear it but don't yet know why. And share your thoughts below, because every comment here becomes a spark. One awakened mind helping another remember. Together, we move beyond the dark.